In this video, I'm going to be going over some AutoCAD basics so that you can learn to navigate your way through AutoCAD. Throughout this video, I'm going to be going over the following topics: your drawing area and layouts, your command line and commands, changing project units, pan, moving throughout the drawing, dynamic input, and selecting images, shapes, and lines. So first things first, when you open up AutoCAD, you are going to see a page in front of you that is either going to ask you to open up a project that you've recently done or open up a new project. So let's go ahead and start a new project. And as you guys can see, there's a whole ton of stuff for us to take in, and it could seem a little bit overwhelming. So let's quickly go over some of the stuff. The first things first is where you guys see my crosshair. This is your drawing space. So this is pretty much a page that you can draw on that is never ending. So you can draw your first level of your house, your second, your third, your fourth, and so on. You can draw 100 bolts if you want to, whatever the case is. If we go over to the top here, you guys will see that there's a bunch of different tabs. We've got home, insert, annotate, etc, etc. Each of these tabs have different tools for you to navigate through. For now, we're just going to stay on the home tab. If we go straight down to the bottom over here, you guys will see model, layout 1 and layout 2. So like I said, model, this is where you're going to be drawing the images that you need. And then if we go over to layout, a layout is actually the page that you are going to design when you represent it to a customer or to a colleague or whatever the case is. This is the page that is going to give you all of the information where you're going to put your name, so who it was designed by, who it was drawn by, who it was checked by, or your notes, etc. So from the bottom over here where we just were, if we go all the way to the right, you guys will notice that there's this word that says model, so model or paper space. This is where you're drawing. So this is the different options that you can have for your drawing space. So if you guys have a look here, this is the grid mode. If you want grid on or off, you can turn it on and off here. I like to keep mine on. And as you guys can see, we have a bunch of different options. We've got dynamic input, we've got polar tracking, and then we've also got these snap modes. So when you've drawn a line, you can actually snap to the start of the line and the end of the line, or you can even snap to the middle of the line. The next thing that we have is this command line. A command line is very important. You guys will see that later on while using CAD. The command line comes in pretty handy when you need to use commands. If you want to draw a line, you can type in the command line L and it will start giving you different options. You don't have to just use the line, you can now use length, layer, layout line, but for this one, let's go line. So as you guys can see, I can now draw my line. Talking about the command line, you don't only have to use the command line, you can also just freely type. So I'm just going to type in L, and as you guys can see, we have these options over here which also acts as the command line. The command line comes in handy for other options. So I'm going to quickly draw us a circle. I'm going to start drawing the circle, and as you guys can see, inside of the command line it's saying specify radius of circle. So I can now give the radius of the circle, or I can choose diameter, and we can select, or we can type in the diameter of the circle instead of the radius. If we go over to the right here, we've got this wheel that says north, east, south, and west. And then we've also got this block here that allows us to pan, zoom, and orbit, etc, etc. So we're not going to focus on this wheel at the moment because this is for 3D, and most of these options here are also for 3D. But I'm going to quickly talk about these two, pan and zoom. So when you're navigating throughout your page, you might have a drawing over here and you might have a drawing over there, and instead of zooming out and then pretty much zooming back into your drawing, we can now use the pan option. To use that, you just click your middle mouse button and you start moving around your page. The next thing that we have is zoom extents. Zooms to display the maximum extent of all objects. So if we go have a look here, we've got a bunch of different options. We can zoom in window, previous, real time, all, etc, etc. So if we say zoom in, it will start zooming in, and if we now click on that, it will just keep zooming in until it probably can't anymore. So the next thing I want to talk about is changing your project units. So like before we use command lines, we're going to use it again. So for this, we are going to type in UN, and it's going to give us the units option. We now have this block where we can change different settings. So as you guys can see, we've got length over here and angle. We can change the decimals, or we can go architectural, engineering, fractional, or scientific. The same with the angles. So we can go degrees, gradients, radians, etc., etc. You can also change how many decimals you want to see, because yes, sometimes it can be a little bit much. And this is where you change your project's units. So it's currently set at inches. It's automatically set at inches when you open AutoCAD. And for this, I'm going to be working in millimeters. I'm going to click on that and we're going to say millimeters. As you guys can see, there's a bunch of different things that you can work with: centimeters, meters, kilometers, etc., etc. But for now, we're going to stick with millimeters. And then you just say OK and you're all done. So the next thing I want to talk about is the dynamic input. So before I carry on, I want to show you guys how to put it onto your model hotbar. So your model hotbar is here at the right bottom of the screen. So if you guys have a look here, it's dynamic input and mine is turned on. If you do not have this in your hotbar, you can go over here to the customization and turn it on. So it will now be in your hotbar. So if I click on that, it's gone. If I click on it again, it's back there. And then there's also all these other options that you can have a look into. So currently my dynamic input is turned on. I'm going to quickly turn it off and show you guys what I want to explain to you. So if I go over to line and I click line, you guys will see that I just have a crosshair. So I'm going to click and start drawing my line, and you guys can see it's showing me that it's going to be 11 long. But I don't get to type in, well, I can type in how long I want it. Let's say I wanted 10. I've just typed it in, but you can't see it. So there we go. I've entered and my line is now 10. We can quickly measure that if you want. If I turn dynamic input on, you guys will notice that when I select the object that I want to draw, we now have these blocks that are giving us information. So it's saying specify first point, and then it's showing me the point on the page where I'm going to start drawing, which really doesn't matter at all. So once I click the line, I now have the option to give the length as well as the angle. So let's say I want the line to be 10 millimeters long. And then I'm going to click tab, and that is how I access the angle mode. So let's say I want it to be 20 degrees. And as you guys can see, we now have our line that is 20 degrees up and it's 10 millimeters long. So let's start off with something basic. Let's draw a square. We're going to make it 10 long by 10 wide, obviously, because it's a square. So 10 up and then 10 this side, and there we go. So something I do want to show you guys is that instead of having to press 10 in again, we can also just go ahead, get to a snap point of the other line, because we know the other line is 10 millimeters. We can just get to a snap point, and as you guys can see, when I move my cursor away, we now have this line and it's already snapping it for us. And as you guys can see, it's 10 millimeters long, so we can just go ahead and click it. So now that we have our square, I'm going to go through selecting images, like selecting lines, shapes, or objects. So the first way you can select items is by clicking on the line. You don't have to hold in any buttons, you can just go ahead and click on each individual item. So the next way to select items is by clicking your left mouse button and letting it go, don't hold it in. And then we're going to move our mouse to the right hand of our screen. As you guys can see, we have now formed a solid blue block. So while I'm hovering over these lines, you guys can see they are not being highlighted, which means they are not being selected. And the reason for that is because the entire line is not inside of the block. So if I quickly go over this line at the top here and I complete the block over the line, it has now highlighted the line, which means we can select it. So let's try that again quickly. We're going to start moving down. It's not selecting any of the lines, but once I completely cover the block, it has now selected the lines. If I start moving my mouse backwards to this side, we can now see it doesn't matter how far I go, we can see only the left line has been selected. And that is because the other pieces of the lines are not inside the block. The next way is by creating a green block, and the way we're going to do that is also left click, but don't hold it in, just left click and let go, and we're going to start moving to the left hand side of our screen, and we have now created this green dotted block. So with this green dotted block, it selects the image even though it's not completely inside of the block. So let me quickly show you what I mean. If I hover over these two lines, it has already selected them, even though the lines are still outside of the block. So I'm quickly going to draw some circles and just add a little bit of shapes to our page. Let's add something over there, and there we go. So this one is called the lasso selection. This is where you click in your left mouse button, you hold it in, and you start moving your mouse around the page. And there we go, we have selected the square only. So instead of doing something like this, where it's going to select the circles, but we actually only want the square, we can use the lasso selection. And just like the solid blue block and the dotted green block, it works the same in lasso selection. So these are just some basic things for you to get used to CAD, and I will be having some more on the way. If you guys are interested in seeing those, seeing a part 2, part 3, etc., make sure to subscribe, give this video a like, and let me know if it helped you in the comments down below. Also, let me know in the comments down below if there's anything you're stuck on that I could possibly help you with. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye bye.